Horrible, awful, terrible, terrible, terrible.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl with you guys. Jordan's, of course, on Rebel HQ. Make sure you're checking that YouTube channel out or wherever you get Rebel HQ. And also host of the Insurgents podcast. We got an amazing show for you guys today. Elon started a third party. We're gonna get to that in the second hour because there's so much news. We're asking you on tyt.com whether you think about joining that party. Hold, wait till you see the options. Check out the website for that. But overall, today a show could be called "As the World Turns," because everyone is turning on everything. So MAGA's turning on Trump on the Epstein files. Trump and his team are turning on themselves on the Epstein files. Elon Musk has turned on Trump. Joe Rogan has turned on Israel. Israeli soldiers have turned on Israel's practices in Gaza. So there is nothing but flip-flops in this show and people turning on one another in fascinating ways. Oh, Donald Trump reversed himself on the tariffs. Of course, of course. But which direction did he go this time? So much news to catch up on. So Jordan, let's get started.
Take a look at this.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review.
We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
But perhaps the biggest bombshell, investigators say they found no incriminating client list of Epstein's, no credible evidence that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals, and no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties.
That's right. After months of promising to deliver the goods on the Jeffrey Epstein case, Trump's Justice Department and the FBI have miraculously concluded there is no evidence that Epstein blackmailed powerful figures, kept a client list, or was murdered. Cenk, before we get into the details and all of the fallout, are you buying it?
Of course not. Literally no one sane could buy this. And so we'll get into the people not buying it a little bit later in this segment and in this show from all the different sides. And we'll get into who is powerful enough to cover this up. But guys, I want you to understand what Jordan just said. The people who said they definitely were the Epstein files and they were definitely going to reveal them and release them are now saying, not only is there no Epstein files, even though they were on her desk and there was truckloads of them, there were no Epstein clients. Hundreds of victims. The FBI once said it could get up into the thousands. Thousands of videotapes. Well, those videotapes were for no reason at all. And it doesn't even matter because there was no clients. No one to be prosecuted. Hundreds of victims. Did they victimize themselves? Well, we're gonna find out apparently. No, actually, we're never going to find out. Isn't it interesting? Democrats and Republicans, and yet both of the parties say, oh, no, there's nothing to see there. It's definitely not us or our intelligence agencies or any of our allies. Definitely not. Well, it doesn't matter because there's no clients at all. Then why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison? Why did that Prince Andrew give a giant settlement? Why did any of these things happen? Why did all of these people say there was, and then they get in, they go, sweat, as we're about to get into in a second. There is no files, there are no clients. Yeah, sure. So let Jordan explain to you guys, show you the truth and the lies. But if you believe that there were no Epstein clients, you might be the dumbest person in America.
Let's get into the details. According to a DOJ and FBI memo detailing the findings of their investigation, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions. We did not uncover evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. They also conclude that Epstein committed suicide in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City on August 10th, 2019, which they argue is consistent with previous autopsy findings and video footage. As part of this memo, the DOJ released 11 hours of alleged surveillance camera footage from the common area of the Special Housing Unit, or SHU, where Epstein was held between. And they write in their report, as DOJ's Inspector General explained in 2023, anyone entering or attempting to enter the tier where Epstein's cell was located from the SHU common area would have been captured by this footage. The FBI's independent review of this footage confirmed that from the time Epstein was locked in his cell at around 10:40 p.m. on August 9th, 2019, until around 6:30 a.m. the next morning, nobody entered any of the tiers in the SHU. But as you might remember, that DOJ Inspector General report they cited also revealed very suspicious technical issues with cameras inside the prison. Recorded video evidence for August 9th and 10th for the SHU area where Epstein was housed was only available from one prison security camera due to a malfunction of MCC New York's digital video recorder system that occurred on July 29th, 2019. While the prison cameras continued to provide live video feeds, recordings were made for only about half the cameras. MCC New York personnel discovered this failure on August 8th, 2019, but it was not repaired until after Epstein's death. The available recorded video footage from the one SHU camera captured a large part of the common area of the SHU and portions of the stairways leading to the different SHU tiers, including Epstein's cell tier. Epstein's cell door, however, was not in the camera's field of view. The two guards assigned to check Epstein's cell overnight fell asleep and shopped online at their desk for about 3 hours and later falsified related records. Nonetheless, the government insists there was no foul play. And now they're trying to say that what they really care about is protecting Epstein's thousands of victims. One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends. To that end, while we have labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. That's a departure from the Trump administration's attitude at the beginning of his term. One day after telling Fox News she had Epstein's client list on her desk, Pam Bondi distributed binders marked declassified to far-right influencers at the White House. But it quickly became clear that the information inside was already public. So Cenk, despite these stunts, you might say, and all of these previous claims from the administration and many figures throughout the Trump camp, now suddenly they want everyone to believe that there's nothing to see here. Okay. It's all good. We're moving on.
So there are two things to talk about right now. One is the video cameras, the other is the series of spectacular coincidences. So first on the video cameras. So there was a mysterious video camera recorder malfunction at the exact time that Epstein hung himself. But don't worry, they have one useless camera trained on a rando door in a rando common area. But wait, that doesn't show a cell at all. It shows a common area. It proves absolutely nothing. And it appears there's 1 minute missing from the video. Oh, come on, guys. I mean, this is the most incompetent cover up in the history of humanity. It's done so incompetently. We're gonna tell you later in the show about how MAGA's like, oh, come on. We'll believe anything from Trump, but this is the most unbelievable thing that anyone has ever. There's no clients, and the video cameras were magically off, and the guards were magically asleep and shopping. All of this magic happened, but don't worry, there's nothing to see here, okay? Okay, look, I don't know that a single Democrat believes that. I don't know that a single Republican believes that. Some weird defense of it from folks who support Israel. I don't know why they're doing that. That's an interesting defense. Not all of them, but some of them, and I find that super curious. Okay, so look, obviously the cameras. Look, if you can't understand that the camera's not working at the time, and this junk video that they put out being totally irrelevant since it doesn't show a cell. Again, maybe they're assuming their voters are super dumb. And they're thinking, it doesn't matter what the Democrats think. It doesn't matter what independents think. We just have to trick MAGA. And those guys will listen to anything Trump says. So if Trump says, no, don't believe your lying eyes and ears. It is the command of the party that you listen to us instead of the truth. Okay, but as you're gonna see, that's not even working because no one can believe. Okay, so now there's spectacular coincidences, and there's a lot of these. So did you know this? I did not know this until today. So parts of this I found out with a great interview we did with Tara Palmieri. You should check that out on our YouTube channel. Okay, she's a reporter who's covered Epstein a lot. So Epstein was not a finance guy. He was a math teacher. But I didn't know until today who had hired him to be a math teacher when he had no college degree. Wait, what? Epstein didn't even have a college degree? Okay, but he got hired anyway to a private school by the father of former Attorney General Bill Barr. What? Okay, he was let off in 2000s with a very light slap on the wrist by a guy named Acosta, who later wound up being Donald Trump's labor secretary. Wait, what? He was a prosecutor. What does he have to do with labor secretary? Did you know the top groomer that was helping Epstein, his #1 co-conspirator, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's apparently unjustly in prison right now, if you believe the Trump administration, because how could she have been a groomer and helped bring hundreds of victims to Epstein if there were no clients and no one ever got abused and no one's ever going to be prosecuted for it? Anyway, so she's there. Trump, by the way, said she's a very fine person twice after she was arrested, and he knew that she was the top groomer in the country. Of course, Trump has also said that Epstein was, quote, a terrific guy, and he knew that he liked him young. Okay, so not released under Democrats, not released under Trump. One last amazing coincidence. So that same Ghislaine Maxwell, her dad was an Israeli spy. Things that make you go, But hey, there's nothing to see here. Everyone should move along, and the government isn't lying to you. This doesn't look like it's some sort of inside job by some sort of government at all. No, 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 no. Now that Biden and Trump have told you that there's nothing, I'm sure nothing happened. All those hundreds of victims, what, lied? They're all fictional? No one actually abused them? They weren't rich and powerful? They're not on tape? But we know they're on tape. And now you're not gonna release any of the tapes, and you're not gonna charge any of the people. Okay, this, and then they wonder how people lose faith in government. This is exactly how they lose faith in government, but a lot more. Go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, this is so interesting to me because I think the right does a lot of things well on a movement and base wide level. They're really good at building up narratives. They're really good at message discipline. But it's really interesting to see here how figures in the Trump administration have backed themselves into a corner rhetorically. You pointed out, we've talked about, they've said, oh, the list is on my desk. And you have people like Kash Patel and JD Vance over the past several months or a year or a couple of years talking about how the reason that you, our dear beloved MAGA, the reason you're not seeing these files is because corrupt co-conspirators in the Democratic Party and the government are hiding it from you. That's a lot to answer for when you're in power and you're saying, well, there's nothing to see here. And it is interesting to see how on some things, when the Trump administration betrays their base, I would argue the big beautiful bill is a massive betrayal of their base. In instances like that, they'll just accept it, they'll justify it. But here, they're so conditioned to expect transparency and feel entitled to, and I would argue there's truth to that, entitled to transparency in this, that they are freaking out. There's massive backlash against this administration. We'll get into it more in the next segment, but I think the administration really poorly handled this and miscalculated how their own supporters would react.
Yeah, and I gotta say, wait till Epstein finds out. He killed himself for nothing. Turns out there were no clients and there was no tape. Again, I challenge one person to raise their hand and say, I'm dumb enough to believe this. So the conspiracy theory now is not that Epstein was murdered and he was working with some sort of intelligence agencies and blackmailed all those people. That is not the conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory now is that the government is right and there were no clients and there was no file and there is no tape of the hallway and the guards were vigilant but didn't happen to see what happened, and that and we're all supposed to believe that all those powerful people didn't exist, didn't sleep with those people, didn't go to Lolita, get on the Lolita Express and go on to Epstein's Island. When we all know they did, we all know it. This is amazing. This is the US government under both parties saying, we think our citizens are fools, we'll treat them like fools, and you are not allowed to lose faith in government. The politicians are honest and wonderful, and they are not affected by money. And Jeffrey Epstein was an upstanding individual who didn't have any clients at all and just randomly killed himself for no reason. And by the way, we randomly arrested his co-conspirator and she's spending 20 years in prison. But no powerful person actually slept with those young girls. My ass, says the entire country, united for the first time on this issue. I don't see any dissent at all unless you're mentally challenged. Like you literally have mental problems and can't figure out that 1 + 1 = 2. So you'd have to be, again, the most establishment loving, naive fool in the world to think that there were no clients and there was no list and there were no tapes. There definitely were. Trump is definitely lying. So was Biden, so was every president that covered up this Epstein drama. Why? There's only one thing that could keep governments from revealing what happened under both parties, and that some intelligence agency was involved, either ours or an ally's or both. I don't really even see a second theory. I mean, here, Jordan, one last quick question for you here. Do you see a second theory? What's the second theory? That he just did it all on his own, but yet the government is somehow covering it for Epstein anyway, because both Democrats and Republicans, politicians and government officials all just randomly love Jeffrey Epstein and just wanted to cover it up? Because they're definitely covering it up. So why in the world would they cover it up if it wasn't for one of our intelligence agencies?
I mean, it could be. I think the simplest explanation, not necessarily the right one, would just be, yeah, sure, he did it to blackmail people because he, if he was some financier and he wanted their money and that would, sustain his lifestyle, whatever. I think for me, the explanation is, yeah, Trump's in it. Trump's allies, his friends are in it. Just get rid of everything. Don't leave any potential link out there. Don't try to, classify it or censor it or omit documents. Just get rid of everything, throw it all out, and that's how you avoid anyone getting caught up in it. Sure, you get, you cover for some Democrats, but there's loyalty among the ultra wealthy and the powerful, even though they might pretend to hate each other publicly. I mean, sure, we know Bill Clinton has some sort of relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but Trump and Clinton have gone back years. He was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. So that's a big club and we're not in it. And I think despite their political differences and all of the rhetoric about how Democrats are ruining society, they still recognize, hey, we run things here and we're not gonna break up this little club, because then that just sets out a new back and forth that I don't think anybody wants, because then you started getting into other personal issues and you get other dirty laundry aired out there. And I don't think that's something they wanted to invite. That's the simplest explanation.
Yeah.
Sure, it could be. We just don't know for sure on the intelligence agency stuff.
No, Jordan's right. That's the second explanation, which is, yeah, of course there's a client list. Of course there were clients. Of course there were tapes. But since very high-powered Republicans and Democrats were implicated, both parties are never going to let you know. It wasn't involved in the intelligence agencies. They just happened. Epstein just stumbled upon all of these super powerful people, got them all on tape with underage girls, but never used it or did use it just to get rich. And then both the Democrats and Republicans know it, but they won't ever tell you because they're both on the list. Plausible. That's a plausible second explanation. But there is no explanation where there were no clients and there is no file and there are no tapes. That's not possible at all. So my guess is, of the two possibilities, the one where he's connected to the intelligence agencies is far, far, far more likely. Not that doesn't, by the way, preclude Jordan's theory. There seem to be very prominent Democrats and Republicans on that list, so it could be both. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, what does MAGA think of all this? Are they saying, well, if Trump says it, then there must have been no Epstein files, or are they in open rebellion? Let's find out when we return.
They knew and they let it happen.
How you doing? I'm going through my notes for the stories here and replacing one of the stories because we got an update. Oh, there you are. So you got a little look at Inside Baseball there. All right, by the way, ring the bell, subscribe. Those are all free. God bless. If you want to join, we love you for it. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. All right, let's read these blind. Let's have fun. Salt of the Union says on tyt.com, the real Epstein files were friends we made along the way. That's funny. Gemma Lee says, Dems need to 24/7 say the files do exist, Trump is in the files, and demand the release of the files. Anything less is political malpractice and demonstrates a consciousness of guilt. That's a great point. So I think both Democrats and Republicans are on the list, but I'm not in Democratic leadership. If you're in Democratic leadership, you should be pounding away that obviously Trump is in the files. Obviously. There's no other reason why he would block these. And if the Democratic leadership isn't doing that, that shows you, that means there are very high profile Democrats who are on the list and have basically told Democratic leadership, shh, don't say anything about Epstein, okay? So, hey, that's not my decision. That's not Gemma Lee's decision. We're about to see what the Democrats do. That's their decision. And that'll tell you what their state of mind is. By the way, we're gonna get to MAGA, but Republican politicians haven't said a word, not one word after Epstein. Now they're all like, shush. Yeah, that's what I thought. Navinik says, after all this, I'll believe JFK killed himself before I'll ever believe Epstein killed himself. Okay, they could have gone with that too, even though we all saw JFK get killed. Oh yeah, sure. It was a suicide. It was a suicide. Yeah, could have been. Jack Callahan says, this is similar to who killed JFK. Hopefully the Epstein files will be released in our lifetimes. Look, it doesn't look like they were gonna release any of those things. No, you have to have someone honest go into office. And I know that seems like an impossible dream, but like someone honest doesn't have to hide or protect the guilty powerful people or CIA or Mossad or whoever it is. Boomer Dragon Cat says, let's offer Ghislaine a deal to drop some truth bombs. Trust me, she's not gonna say a word. After they killed Epstein in prison, she got the memo loud and clear, okay? Kelly K says, in the same statement, the DOJ claims they have over 300 gigs of video evidence of the 1,000 victims Epstein abused. Are we now supposed to believe the victims were in the videos by themselves? This is absolutely appalling. I mean, they're treating us like we're all idiots. It's just, It's crazy. Anyway, Carte Blanche writes in on Twitch, happy birthday, Anna. Have a cake topper if you want one. So it is Casper's birthday today, part of the reason why she's on vacation today. Happy birthday, Casper, from all of TYT to you. So A Trollopy says he's gonna get a pardon. He's gonna pardon her, he thinks. That would be amazing if Trump pardoned Ghislaine Maxwell. Scuff Meta says, they're on the tape, stupid, meaning the clients are, absolutely. Mondo Lastraca says, 96 hours without TYT, I survived. I did do some lives and some shorts, check those out too. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. I'm amused by this YouTube member, so I'm gonna read this. JT Drum Shop said, my dog ate the client list, sorry. That'll be next. All right, Jordan, tell us about MAGA and Epstein.
The Trump administration's attempt to scuttle all concern and speculation over the Epstein files has, unsurprisingly, upset the MAGA base and even provoked ally turned enemy Elon Musk. Musk posted this on X early this morning. What's the time? Oh, look, it's no one has been arrested o'clock again, with the official Jeffrey Epstein pedophile arrest counter set at 0. And he also added, this is the final straw, in response to somebody who said, what happened to the client list is on my desk? What happened to the Epstein files part 2? What happened to those magical binders? What a farce. Musk spent the last day making his disappointment clear and amplifying right-wing figures who, for the last several years, have demanded transparency in the Epstein case. And this reignited a recent line of attack against Trump. Musk's skepticism comes just weeks after he accused former ally President Donald Trump of being in the Epstein files during an online spat before deleting the claim and admitting he went too far. Musk wasn't alone either. Right-wing agitator Mike Cernovich posted, no one is believing the Epstein cover-up, Donald Trump. This will be part of your legacy. There's still time to change it. Right-wing influencer Jack Posobiec tweeted, I want answers on Epstein, as many as possible, not press releases, answers. But what many people have pointed out is conservative influencers like Posobiec were brought to the White House in February for exclusive access to the Epstein files. He posted this selfie on February 27th, holding the binder, Epstein files phase 1. Another influencer who received one of those binders, Chad Prather, posted, where is the Epstein info the American people were promised? You handed us a notebook and promised more was on the way. You told us it existed, and now you say it doesn't? America deserves answers. But those binders weren't actually revealing. They contained no new information, and the administration promised more would be on the way. On the day of the binder stunt, Rolling Stone summarized it this way. Conspiracy theorists, amateur investigators, and online cranks of all sorts were livid today as they came to realize that documents related to the late pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, released by the Trump administration in a highly publicized spectacle, contained zero new information, despite promises of bombshell revelations. Their shock resembled nothing so much as Charlie Brown's surprise when Lucy pulls the football out from under him yet again. And now it seems like nothing ever will be coming. No bombshells, no revelatory information, nothing. Now, even Fox News' Peter Doocy is offering rare pushback to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt over this move from the administration. Take a look.
The FBI looks at the circumstances surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein. According to the report, this systematic review revealed no incriminating client list. So what happened to the Epstein client list that the Attorney General said she had on her desk?
Well, I think if you go back and look at what the Attorney General said in that interview, which was on your network on Fox News.
I've got the quote.
Go ahead.
John Roberts said, DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen? And she said, it's sitting on my desk right now to review.
Yes, she was saying the entirety of all of the paperwork, all of the paper in relation to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. That's what the Attorney General was referring to, and I'll let her speak for that. But again, when it comes to the FBI and the Department of Justice, they are more than committed to ensuring that bad people are put behind bars.
Okay, the client list must have just disappeared. But perhaps the funniest summary was from this ex-user who posted, "I can't believe Epstein killed himself right before he was about to be acquitted due to a complete lack of evidence." Now, Jank, this is interesting to me. You're seeing some of the most loyal Trump supporters publicly bashing him. What do you make of this?
Yeah, because this is a bridge too far. And so, look, the other phenomenon is, as we've talked about a lot on TYT, excuse me. So in the past, they got almost all their information from Fox News, and it was a talking point machine. Now they're getting it from different shows. And all those shows have a number of disadvantages to them. But the one thing that they were, and they have some disagreements between them, and that's forcing people to use their independent judgment and look for evidence, etc. All of that is positive. And the one thing they all shared was that they thought, yeah, the Epstein files were disastrous. And remember, all the talk the right wing had about, pedophilia and pedos and groomers, and all of that was connected to Epstein. So for them to now walk back and say that Epstein files were no big deal, they'll have a revolt from their own followers and their own viewers. So it just goes to almost every show. Patrick Bet-David's show was going, what the hell is going on? Vincent Oshana was livid over it on that show. Adam Selznick, who supports Israel, was trying to say it's no big deal. But if we found out the list, America would be so badly damaged. How would he know? I don't know. So other than some random Israeli supporters, no one is defending this that I've seen. And now I want to show you guys some of the people who are really angry about, and wait till we get to Alex Jones. That's coming up, him crying and vomiting in a second. But the two of the biggest people who were livid about the Epstein files were Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Let's take a little look at how it was and how it's going.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. We have an election coming up and we need to adjudicate this matter at the polls. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything.
That Jeffrey Epstein story is a big deal. Please do not let that story go. Keep your eye on this. Catherine Rumler, we need to keep the heat on this case, folks. There are a lot of people who are knee deep in the Washington swamp who are not telling you the truth.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Yeah. Oops. Oh, this is the biggest problem, man. And he was the worst of the worst. Who's Jeffrey Epstein? I don't even know him. Oh, he killed himself. No, don't look. He doesn't even have any clients. There's no files at all. It's impossible not to be super curious about what happened to Dan Bongino and Kash Patel. I mean, we're a little curious from the left. On the right, now it's just a giant factory of what the F, right? And we never believed in Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, but the right wing, the MAGA voters, etc., they believed in those guys completely, and they believed that they were on the Epstein file, case, and they were going to reveal it. So when they come in and betray MAGA like this, and say, oh yeah, you're all conspiracy theorists, you're all imagining it. There are no clients, there is no file. Oh my God, they're livid. Speaking of livid, let's go to Alex Jones for a sec.
I just got to the office. I'm going to go throw up, actually. And this only happens every few years when something really, really bad happens or something. I mean, I'm physically gonna puke probably right now. My mouth is watering right now. because I have integrity. And, I just really need the Trump administration to succeed and to save this country, and they're doing so much good. And then for them to do something like this tears my guts out.
Donald Trump, what have you done? You've torn Alex Jones's guts out. All right, one last one. Benny Johnson. I mean, if anyone is reliable in kissing Trump's ring, it's Benny Johnson, right? But no, in this case, he says to say there were thousands of victims in a convicted sex trafficking ring, and then to say there were no customers when the operation happened right before our very eyes, insults our intelligence. He went on to say trafficking women to no one? I don't buy it. There are other dark forces at play here. And then he quotes Orwell, which I agree with, and I actually had the same quote in one of my tweets. The party told you to reject evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command, right? And the party in this case is the Republican Party and Trump. So that is almost all of Trump's supporters going, yeah, not buying it at all. And I'm sure some of them will come up with kooky conspiracy theories. Oh, Trump actually wants to protect the Democrats because he's such a nice guy. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure some portion of them will come up with that. But as you can see, the overwhelming majority here going, no, the government is lying. I don't care that Trump is president. Of course there were clients. So Jordan, what do you make of it?
Yeah, how do you have potentially thousands of victims and nobody else? It's just him. The math doesn't add up. It just doesn't, it defies all logic and reason. So it's so obvious that even these people can't pretend to toe the line. There are many other instances where Trump will obviously lie, and they'll, the tariffs and the economy, the beginning of his term, markets were not doing well. Generously, we'll say they were unstable and they were defying the question of up or market growth or stability. Like they were questioning basic math. This is so obvious that they won't even do that. No, they know this is not true. They know there are other materials, documents, evidence, figures involved that are being protected for whatever reason. It's just interesting to see this is where they break from him. And I think it speaks to how effective the right has used this as a cudgel over the years, because they tried to make this into a partisan issue. I think there were plenty of people on the left who also thought that transparency was sorely needed, and they expected many Democrats to be involved. I don't think that prevented them from caring or forced them to, ignore people like Bill Clinton who had connections to this guy. Some sure, but the more prominent ones, I don't think so. But it's interesting to see this is the issue. This is the hill they will die on. That's fascinating to me, because at the end of the day, sure, we'll get more transparency. You want, I guess, it to some extent. I don't know if more transparency leads to justice for the victims, but I guess an argument could be made that it does. But it's not something that's going to materially change people's quality of life. And that's what's so, this is the hill they chose to die on. Something that is more about a narrative and scandal versus something that will, address the cost of living for people or affect the cost of groceries or housing or whatever. It's fascinating to me. You saw some people break out on Iran and war and foreign policy, and that's great. But nothing like what we're seeing here, a unified front on the right, all criticizing Trump. And that's just, it's wild.
Yeah, so that's great points, Jordan. So I want to break it down to three different categories here. There's the categories where Trump's voters were betrayed in a lot of ways, but they refused to acknowledge it. So for example, in the budget bill, they said that they hated the debt and they didn't want to add $1 to the debt and they wanted to cut. They added $3.3 trillion to the debt. But in that one, they're going to make excuses. Oh, no, magically, the rich will trickle on us and it'll bloom flowers that'll get us $3.4 trillion. Magic works, right? So they lie to themselves to get themselves to believe that they didn't just massively add to the debt when they absolutely did, right? And then there's other ones like the tariffs. Yeah, it seems to be increasing prices and leading to volatility and hurts the consumer and is a regressive tax on the consumer. But no, in the future, you will see the genius of Donald Trump as the tariffs magically bloom and create lots of revenue and doesn't cause inflation at all, et cetera, right? So I can understand why, because there's easier pathways to lie to yourself, right? And it's so much easier to say, no, in the future, right? But here, there's a couple of problems they have. One, they're shutting the door on the future. They're saying, we're never going to release any names. Okay, so you can't say, oh, no, but magically Trump will later, right before he goes out of office, will release all the names. No, because he's saying, no, I'm not going to. I mean, he might as well scream, I'm on the list, right? I mean, he says him and Epstein were best friends for 15 years. He said he knew that Epstein liked him young. He wished Ghislaine Maxwell well after she was caught and was going to trial, et cetera. She's the biggest groomer, et cetera. So look, but there's probably plenty of Democrats on the list too. That's why they didn't release it either. Now, or they have other reasons that are, aligned with the Democratic Party or our government in some way, why the Democrats didn't release it. Okay, but then there's a second bucket where folks like Rogan are going, you know what? I said, deport the criminals, close the border. I didn't mean deport all undocumented immigrants from the middle of the country and take them away from their jobs and their families, et cetera. That's kind of a, well, maybe you did and maybe you didn't, but I'm glad that you're saying you didn't now. I'll take it as, a sign that you realize that you went for a guy who was too extreme, right? And so that's kind of the middle ground. And then there's the third category, which interestingly enough, almost all relate to Israel. It could be that it's a coincidence. So here's what I mean by that. So one is on Gaza, when Israel and America, including Trump, are like, no, Gaza's fine. The Palestinians are the terrorists. The Israelis are a moral army, and they weren't trying to kill any civilians. But now Rogan, almost all the independent podcasters, and even some portion of MAGA are like, yeah, guys, we have eyes and ears. Gaza's totally leveled. Piers Morgan is flipped. He's totally leveled. What you guys are insulting our intelligence. The whole thing's a freaking parking lot. You've killed at least minimum 56,000 people, minimum 30,000 women and children, and you're pretending you're not doing it on purpose? That it was always a mistake and that you only meant to kill Hamas? No one believes you because we have eyes and ears. And now this is the second thing that goes into that bucket. You're telling us that there were no clients. Thousands of hours of tape of molestation and pedophilia, but golly gee, you can't find one guilty person there other than Epstein and Maxwell. No one believes you. We all have eyes and ears. So why are both the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States government lying to us on purpose about both of those things? And they're not going to be able to cover it up. You'd have to be the deepest MAGA in the world to think, oh yeah, I believe Donald Trump on this. I honestly haven't seen one person online say that yet. I'm sure there are, right? But even the major MAGA influencers are too embarrassed to defend this because it is indefensible. So whatever was foul play regarding Epstein, it's now obvious the Trump administration is in on it. And even his own voters and supporters are painfully aware of it. All right. So let's take a quick break here. Speaking of Israel, we have more disaster from Israel, including that Rogan piece that I just mentioned. We'll be right back.
Tears my guts out.
All right, let's go to Super Chat. 00083 says, yep, Cenk, more of these deny that Epstein clowns, deny that MC killed himself and nothing ever happened. These people are a joke. impossible to escape that conclusion. That one chick writes in, this just shows you how much power Epstein still has in the country, and he's been dead for years. And by the way, of course, what that really shows you is that it wasn't just Epstein. Because if Epstein had that kind of power, he's already dead. Who are they protecting? It's obviously not Epstein. It's either Epstein's clients or Epstein's handlers or both. Michael Catalano says, question, why didn't Elon Musk simply buy control of the Libertarian Party? They have the infrastructure and he has the cash. Seems obvious to me. It would be hilariously ironic if the Libertarian Party was bought. But hold for it, you never know. I'm not sure that he thinks he needs the Libertarian Party. I don't know. We'll get to that story a little bit later. But good question. Allison Old writes in the YouTube member section, love to see Cenk so happy. Yeah, because guys, look, we've been telling you the government's a bunch of liars for 23 straight years. And I've had to deal mainly with the establishment, but sometimes Democrats and Republicans, in terms of voters, whenever their party is in charge, go, no, 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 no. Only the other side. No, the government's not lying at all. Cenk, you're no way. No, the establishment is right. So having dealt with that mania for 23 years, I'm so glad to see that everyone can now finally see, no, the establishment are the liars. They're the ones that are the conspiracy theorists. They're the ones you shouldn't trust at all. They're the ones who are serving illicit, nefarious interests that they never tell you about and the media covers up for. Mainstream media, I guarantee you. I should retract some of the things I said. There are no Republicans or Democrats that believe this story. I guarantee you mainstream media believes it 100%. I don't know that there's a single cable news anchor that I've seen that went, yeah, right, there was no clients on Epstein's list. I bet they're like dogs. They're all probably like, oh, it's reported the FBI has now concluded that there were no clients on the Epstein list. Okay, great, next story, okay. Bunch of liars. So why is every cable news anchor lying today? That one I don't know, because I know why the politicians do it. We've been over that many times. Mainstream media is a disaster. Anyway, Jennifer Bell writes in, Corn Pop was on the list.
Corn Pop was a bad dude.
Okay, Jennifer, good theory, I like that. Might have prevented both sides from releasing it. Jill LeBlanc writes about Cash Patel and Dan Bongino. This explains why those two morons were hired as part of the Felon 47 team. Burning writes in, there's a picture of Elon and Ghislaine, so he's not in the clear either. I hear you, but he's being very insistent on it. And if he was guilty, that's a bold, bold play. Miss Frilly Knickers says, Anna shares my daughter's birthday. So happy birthday to your daughter too. Happy birthday, Casper, one more time. Preston the Dragon says, Maxwell is the list. She can't be in jail on those charges without victims and without knowing that who those victims slept with. She is the list. Man, they better have 24-hour protection around her, but they won't. Magic Dragon Wizard says everyone in DC is guilty. They must all be on that damn list. And that's what we're all thinking right now.
Tears my guts out.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. I'll read one YouTube member comment. Allison Macklin said, is there anything that's not corrupt? No, unfortunately, as I've been telling you for 23 straight years. No, all of Washington is corrupt. The idea that it's a few bad apples is nonsense. They're institutionally and systematically and systemically corrupt. The money is the corruption. Almost all of them are bought. Although today, we have one of the very rare candidates in the country who is not bought. He is taking the no corporate PAC pledge. That's why he's joined the rebellion. So at 8 o'clock Eastern tonight, the new rebellion Senate candidate. Yeah, I think you guys are gonna love him, so stay right here for that. Jordan, what's next though?
Take a look at this.
Yeah, October 7th was awful. Absolutely.
Obviously.
Terrible attack. But also, what they've done to Gaza is insane.
It's insane.
And if you can't see that, if you can't say that, and your response is Israel has the right to defend itself. Like, what are you talking about? Against what? Children?
Right.
Against women and children that are getting blown apart? Against aid workers that are getting killed? It's insane. And no one wants to talk about it. And if you do talk about it, you're anti-Semitic, which is so strange. Like, I don't know how they wrangled that.
Joe Rogan is making some of his strongest comments thus far against Israel's genocide in Gaza, arguing that what they've done is, quote, effing insane. Rogan's guest on this episode of his podcast was Amjad Masad, a tech CEO whose father is a Palestinian refugee. He tells Rogan the story of his grandparents getting forced out of Palestine during the 1948 Nakba, and here's how Joe responded. Take a look.
That whole thing where kicking people out of Palestine is such an inconvenient story today. When people are talking about Israel and Palestine and the conflict, they do not like talking about what happened in 1948.
Now, Rogan isn't the only conservative manosphere podcaster speaking out against the atrocities in Gaza. We're hearing very similar takes from people like Tim Dillon and Theo Von. Take a look.
Are the people that are starving in Gaza now, is it better? Do they have food, or is it, or what is happening over there? Israel tanks kill 59 people in Gaza crowd trying to get food. Well, not ideal. Not ideal. And this is from that Hamas rag Reuters. Israel military kills 23 Palestinians near aid site in Gaza. Witnesses and medics say. What is the argument for killing the people trying to get food? Does it make sense for the United States to fund that behavior?
You see all these photos of people, just children, women, people, body parts, just people like putting their kids back together. And I just can't believe that we're watching that and that more isn't said about it. I think we're watching probably like, one of the sickest things that's ever happened. It feels to me like it's a genocide that's happening.
Now we're gonna hear from someone who is totally fine with thousands of innocent civilians being killed. But first, Jank, what do you make of Joe Rogan's comments?
Yeah, so look, these independent broadcasters are actually independent. And that doesn't mean that they're gonna agree with you. It doesn't mean that they're gonna agree with you on most of the things. And I don't know if you're on the right or the left, if you're watching or if you're in the middle, but they have no obligation to agree with you. But they also have no obligation to agree with Fox News. So in the old days, you had MSNBC and Fox News, and they were talking point machines, and they both spit out talking points for the Republican Party and Democratic Party. So since a lot of these podcasters voted for Trump, there was a belief that, oh, well, then they must be just like the old days. So they're gonna back what Trump says 100%, just like every anchor on Fox News did in his first term, right? Unquestioningly, and every right-wing media host did in his first term. Well, I said that they wouldn't, and here they are. They're not doing it. And so the important part of that, guy, isn't who's right and who's wrong. What the important part is, they are actually using their eyes and ears. They are actually using their independent judgment. And we might get super frustrated that their judgment doesn't agree with us, even most of the time. But they're not robots. They're real people, and they're looking at Gaza and going, it makes me sick. And I don't want to fund that. And I don't know why we're funding that. Because in the old days, if you were on cable news, didn't matter if you're right, left, middle, nothing mattered. If you said that about Israel, you were gonna get fired, and you were gonna get called an anti-Semite, and your career was going to be over. This is why I prefer the populist woods, because here are 3 of the top podcasters that voted for Trump, all saying, this is nonsense what Israel's doing in Gaza. It's disgusting, and it is indefensible. By the way, an Israeli soldier has now joined them. We're gonna share that those comments in a second with you, right? And so the fact that truth is breaking out in American media is amazing, to the point, Jordan, where Rogan started questioning 1948. I mean, that is a different level of third rail that you can't touch, because there's the mythology around 1948 that they came in and there was no people there at all, and then when the Israelis declared a state, the Palestinians decided to go on a picnic and never came back. No, they were driven from their homes. That's what happened. It might make you uncomfortable and you might not want to hear that, but that's definitely what happened. The Israelis drove the Palestinians out. That's why it's called the Nakba. And yes, they murdered a lot of them. It wasn't like they were having a picnic and had a slight disagreement and moved their families' houses, moved where they had lived for hundreds, some of them thousands of years. No, they were driven from there. So that doesn't mean that Israel shouldn't exist today. Many, many things have happened since then, right? But the idea that Israel is the victim and that the Muslims are the terrorists and the dirty savages and the violent ones, that mythology is finally breaking on the left and the right. So that's why I think it's a beautiful day in America that these guys did turn out to be independent.
Yeah, what's been interesting over the past couple of years is in addition to just the growing base of support for Palestinians and potentially a Palestinian state or some sort of solution where everyone has equal rights there. You see a deeper understanding across the board of the history. I think what was so effective, especially early, was the pro-Israel camps framing of this as starting on October 7th. And this isn't to dismiss innocent civilians being killed on October 7th. Certainly not. We never want to see innocent civilians killed anywhere. But there's decades and decades of context that help people understand why an event like that might occur. And you're seeing like this. I don't know if I ever would have expected Joe Rogan to talk about the Nakba in sympathetic terms, but here we are. So as this war has raged on and more people see it as just disgusting and something that they can't tolerate or remain silent for, there has been a deeper level of education and understanding, which has been interesting to watch. But while more and more independent podcasters and people with eyes and ears are condemning this war, people who support Benjamin Netanyahu, like Alan Dershowitz, are continuing to defend the slaughter of civilians. Take a look.
They hide behind children and babies. They use them as human shields. And that's why Israel has to go in order to dismantle Hamas. Israel never benefits from killing a civilian. Why would any Israeli ever want to kill a civilian?
So why does it keep doing it?
They lose in your court of public opinion.
Yes.
They lose on your television show.
Yes.
If they kill a civilian, they don't want to kill civilians. Hamas makes them kill civilians. But if you want to destroy Hamas, you have to kill the civilians who are being used as human shields. It's a tragic choice. I wish Israel didn't have to make it.
And unfortunately, slaughtering civilians is exactly what they're doing. Not according to us, but according to an IDF soldier who blew the whistle. An Israeli reservist who served 3 tours of duty in Gaza has told Sky News that his unit was often ordered to shoot anyone entering areas soldiers defined as no-go zones, regardless of whether they posed a threat. A practice, he says, left civilians dead where they fell. We have a territory that we are in, and the commands are, everyone that comes inside needs to die. If they're inside, they're dangerous, and you need to kill them, no matter who it is. He said troops killed civilians arbitrarily, and that the criteria for whether or not to open fire on civilians varied depending on the commander. They might be shot, they might be captured. It really depends on the day, the mood of the commander. Every commander can choose for himself what he does, so it's kind of like the Wild West. So some commanders can really decide to do war crimes and bad things and don't face the consequences of that. The soldier described a prevailing belief among troops that all Gazans were terrorists, even when they were clearly unarmed civilians. This perception, he said, was not challenged and was often endorsed by commanders. Cenk, how do you feel when you hear that?
Yeah, so I'm actually heartened to see now a number of IDF soldiers talking to the press, mainly in Israel. This one happens to be outside of Israel, and saying, my conscience can't bear this. We've become the bad guys, and I can't stand it anymore. And it's not just IDF soldiers, it's 2 former Israeli prime ministers saying the same thing. It's, by the way, powerful movie from Brave New Films, Gaza Journalist Under Fire. Check it out on bravenewfilms.org. Holocaust survivors saying, no, stop, please stop, please stop. We're not supposed to be doing this. We're supposed to be fighting against this. So, okay, of course, the diehard Israeli supporters remain, like Alan Dershowitz. And now, full-blown terrorist ideology. That's what Dershowitz just said. He said, we had to kill the civilians. You know, Hamas says the same exact thing. They say the Israeli civilians are hiding behind their democracy, and they're the ones who are occupying the Palestinians. They're the ones voting to occupy us. They're the ones selecting these leaders to kill us and to take our land. So we didn't have a choice. We had to kill the Israeli civilians. And now Dershowitz is saying the mirror image. He's saying, well, Hamas is hiding behind their civilians, so we had to murder their civilians. That is terrorist ideology. And it's not that surprising because Israel's now become a terrorist state. And so they've now killed 500 times the number of children that Hamas has killed in this same conflict. Hamas killed 36 Israeli kids. It's a crime, it's terrible, it's awful. Those poor kids, they didn't do anything wrong, they were just kids. Now Israel has killed well over 17,000 kids. And as you see from the soldiers, and this is not the first story, this is one of many. You should read into Operation Salted Fish, where they're basically playing red light, green light with Palestinians trying to get food. Squid Games level horrors. The Where's Daddy program, where the AI picks someone to kill, and they wait till he gets home so they murder his children and his family with him. These are decisions that Israeli commanders are making. Kill the civilians. That's because they're terrorists. Either the word terrorism means something and applies to both sides if they both go to kill civilians on purpose, or it doesn't mean anything and it's just a racist term that people like Dershowitz use because they don't want to say, oh, I want you to all hate Muslims so Israel can get more of their land. So they have to say like, oh, they're terrorists. And then when you say, well, aren't you killing civilians? You're like, of course Israel has to kill civilians. No, Israel does not have to kill civilians. They choose to. That's what makes them a terrorist state. And yes, when you kill 500 times the number of children that the terrorist group Hamas has, then you're 500 times the terrorist. So I love that the independent broadcasters and podcasters have broken from the monstrosity and the war crimes of the current government of Israel. I commend them for that. I wish they got there earlier, but I'll take the win as it is. And obviously and isn't that amazing? Actually, one last thing real quick, Jordan. Those guys, the podcasters I heard were never gonna break from Trump, broke from Trump on this quicker than mainstream media. Because right now, mainstream media is still pretending that Israel's innocent and they're not a terrorist state and that they're not killing civilians on purpose. I don't see any cable news anchors doing that. Do you see a single cable news anchor that said what Joe Rogan, Tim Dillon, or Theo Von said?
I don't know. I think they will try everything they can to spin this. Like what I've been thinking a lot about is how they have tried to dispel any factual reporting or estimates of civilian deaths and say, well, trying to discredit all of it as, well, these are Hamas numbers, or no, these people weren't civilians. And I think it is encouraging that now soldiers are speaking up about what they saw. Sure, we're seeing aid groups and intergovernmental bodies and nonprofits. They've been sounding the alarm for years. My hope, maybe I'm completely off base, and maybe I'm too optimistic. My hope here is that people within those ranks, when you actually have, IDF soldiers saying, no, they're doing this, they're encouraging it, we know what we're doing and it's wrong. Hopefully, that is what could be a catalyst for, an undeniable groundswell of opposition within Israel and the Israeli government. I mean, this gets into larger conversations around Netanyahu trying to preserve power, of course. But hopefully that becomes impossible to ignore, and maybe that is the avenue. Maybe I'm being way too wildly optimistic, but it does seem like a source like that and more people like that could be the catalyst for change.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, last thing I'll say on it is that the one thing I'm sure of is the very last people on earth who will break from Israel is American mainstream media and American politicians. The overwhelming majority of Congress will be the last ones on that hill. And they'll, to the end, to the bitter end, as they see Israel commit one horrific act of terrorism after another, and they do on a mass scale that creates a genocide. We're all seeing it, starving the Palestinians to death. We're all seeing it. The people are the most corrupt people on earth are our congressmen and senators who go, no, the AIPAC money tells me they did not do that. They are innocent, wonderful, moral army, and all the no good Muslims are the savage terrorists. That's the absolute scum of the earth that are our politicians. They'll be the last 535 people in this country to stand with Israel's genocide. To be fair, there's a wonderful about couple of dozen or so that are not in that group. So about last 500 to stand with Israel's genocide. Great people like Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, and others have already broken from it and can't stand that we're funding this. All right. God damn, we're out of time. You know what? I got the interview coming up. All right, we're gonna have to save the last story for another day. It would have been a good conversation. All right, Jordan, thank you, brother. We appreciate it. Check out Rebel HQ, everybody, and we'll be right back.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad. Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World. This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
If Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined, at some point they want to give me a show.
Every single year that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, you won't believe the meeting that I just had.
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now I know what you're thinking, JR, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right? A few years ago. When I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. At least I did. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial. How to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up a couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You don't say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
Tears my guts out.
Bad dude.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, Michael Schur with you guys, and Matt Skinner. Matt, thanks for hitting that join button below. We appreciate it, brother. All right, we got important stories for you guys. Michael.
We do. I was like, oh, wait, Matt Skinner's joining us? But no, Matt was just joining the Turks. So thank you for doing that. A horror in Texas. Let's take a look at this. In the span of mere hours on the 4th of July, several counties in central Texas were hit with almost 4 months worth of rain, triggering what are catastrophic flooding events that has left at least 100 people dead. More are missing. That number continues to rise as the missing turn into deaths in that area. It's astonishing when you look at how quickly it happened and the devastation that was wrought in just hours. And we've heard about it all weekend. We've heard about the camp where young girls were swept away to their deaths, a miracle that as many at that camp survived as did. But it was just a terrible thing. And before we get into the sort of minute-by-minute details and the numbers into what happened, we should point out, too, that there's been a lot of speculation as to whether or not that Donald Trump has his hands on this and his administration has his hands on the response to this. There are no indications in either way that the staffing played into this, though there are real deficits in staffing at the National Weather Service in Texas from retirements and buyouts, that there are positions that weren't filled, and these cuts to the NWS, unclear yet whether or not they affected the response. Certainly they didn't affect the weather, but other things may have affected the weather. It's important to note that. The two Texas National Weather Service offices most closely involved in forecasting and warning about the flooding, Cenk, on the Guadalupe River, Austin, San Antonio, and San Angelo, are missing key staff members due to Trump administration cuts, but still issued a slew of watches and warnings about the flood danger. And the debate, again, ongoing. However, several experts agreed that the NWS did a solid job of issuing their warnings, whether or not there was enough in place to give them those warnings, whether or not there were water gauges that should have been put in both by Kirk County in Texas and the state of Texas is going to be talked about for quite a while. The NWS office for Austin, San Antonio, as we mentioned, had only had 6 out of 27 positions listed as vacant. So you say only 6 out of 27. That's about 20% or a little more than 20% of the jobs that were open. They also had the appropriate number of staff on duty Thursday night when warnings came out, and I would argue in that case that the appropriate amount of staff when there are warnings, full capacity is the appropriate amount of staff. That's when you call in people who are not scheduled to work. So Cenk, before we get into the details of what happened, what were your initial takeaways from this?
Yeah, so I'm waiting for this to be declared a 1,000-year flood. because that happens every other year, and we still haven't noticed. No, it's probably not climate change making the storms more severe, as every climate scientist in the world has said. I'm sure they're all wrong, but Bob on Facebook is correct. This probably has nothing to do with it. And then in terms of, do you blame Trump administration or not? This, I don't know that. I do know this. If Biden had been in charge and this happened in a red state, there already would have been enormous talk from the MAGA media about Biden didn't pay enough attention to Texas, and look at these good Americans who died, those young girls who died in that camp because Biden's FEMA wouldn't pay enough attention to Texas, and an implication that it was done on purpose, etc. Now that it's Trump in office, I haven't heard a peep about that, right? Not one peep, not from the right, not from the left. Because by the way, the left isn't gonna say something that crazy, or at least Democratic politicians aren't. Right? Like what, did Trump have an agenda against Texas? Of course not. Or so, and then one last thing though. How about if it was a Democratic state and Trump and the Republicans are in charge? Generally speaking, there's a very long history of them going, well, is it that big a deal? I mean, look, the Democrats should know how to control their own states. And like when the fires happened in California, the Democrats should have raked the forest more. It's Gavin Newsom's fault. It's Karen Bass's fault. By the way, it is partly Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass's fault in my opinion, right? But when it's a Democratic state and city, all of a sudden you say it's 100% their fault and they should have been better prepared, right? When it's a red state, you're like, oh, they didn't need to be better prepared. No, the local Republicans are the greatest. So who screwed up? Because there are no Democrats in the area. Who screwed up? Those people are dead right now. And so what I can't stand is this back and forth nonsense and changing how you analyze a story based on who's in charge and what state it is.
I don't remember, Cenk, a disaster in the United States where, in the aftermath, where there's such devastation and destruction, where people have said, we were perfectly prepared, right? That never happens, that you're perfectly prepared. Usually it's the response that is criticized. And you'll recall President George W. Bush in the wake of Katrina, completely criticized for the response to Katrina. Because of the criticism, that White House actually responded and tried to do better at responding in the immediate aftermath of Katrina. The preparedness of New Orleans at that time was excoriated. The warnings that went out from the mayor there, all of that. And the same thing in California. People were starting to go, the Republicans would go after preparedness and not respond. So for them to say that there's nothing wrong with the preparedness is curious to me, because there was clearly something wrong, and that doesn't mean that heads have to roll. It's that these are extraordinary circumstances. I'm also surprised that even in Texas, that Trump hasn't blamed Gavin Newsom for what happened in Texas. Let's talk about though what happened. The National Weather Service issued a flood watch urging residents to be weather aware. That was at 1:18 p.m. on Thursday. Originally, only 5 to 7 inches of rain were expected in the area. However, continued alerts warned of increasing severity, and that was what was then expected. The information, the forecasts were as accurate as they could be at the time. The question is whether or not the warnings reached those who needed to know. So the alert and the emergency response levels, whether or not those were met, and what the coordination between the local officials who are responsible immediately and the state and federal officials, and that's really important, because once you get the National Weather Service involved, it's on a federal, state and federal level, which brings in certainly more forces and more response. In Kerr County specifically, the county that has had the majority of the deaths, their local warning system is at most allegedly subpar. Again, they have had, there is precedent for what happened over the weekend. 1987 devastating floods. There was talk in Kerr County among people in Kerr County, the officials in Kerr County, about putting in a water gauge system that would warn people, especially in all the camps that line the Guadalupe and Kerr County, Medina, Texas, and that area, that there would be a better warning system, but the county didn't have the money to do that. A review of wireless emergency data from a public database that pulls from Federal Emergency Management Agency's integrated public alert and warning system shows that the county did not send its first Amber Alert style push until Sunday, days after the state had launched a full-scale rescue effort. Remember, the first weather alert came at 1:18 p.m. on Thursday, and they didn't get their Amber Alert until Sunday. That's quite a bit of time. Then going back to that, the state had launched a full-scale rescue effort that many days after. Continued rains appeared to prompt an alert sent to much of Kerr County, urging people to move to higher ground because of high confidence of river flooding. So that's massive, massive weather events that are happening, and the response system and the alert system was, in fact, as we said before, subpar. Until then, most cell phone alerts were coming from the National Weather Service's Austin, San Antonio station, but some alerts about life-threatening flooding didn't come until the pre-dawn hours and to areas where cellular reception may have been spotty. This includes that summer camp that we talked about, Camp Mystic, which is right on the Guadalupe River. At least 27 campers and counselors have been confirmed dead. 10 campers and 1 counselor there are still among the missing. And remember, there are now over 100 confirmed dead and 10 still missing, 11 still missing, at least from just Camp Mystic alone. The other thing is Kerr County does not have these sirens, as we mentioned before, like the ones used in tornado zones that give immediate warnings, even though that area, and you've heard about Tornado Alley. Well, this is known as Flash Flood Alley. You'd think you'd have the alarm systems in Flash Flood Alley, which goes to the preparedness that we were talking about earlier. And there were no evacuation orders issued either. I mean, even in the California fires and in so many places now, evacuation orders are issued. And that seems like one of the most important things. Local authorities refuse to give a clear answer as to why there are holes in their emergency response system. When asked about why the campers specifically weren't evacuated, Kerrville City Manager Dalton Rice said just this. He said, "That's a good question. We are focused on the 11 missing." Okay, good to be focused, but it's also certainly a question that's worth answering if it is good. The sheriff didn't answer that question. As we said earlier today, Rice did give a little bit more of an explanation, but it seemed to be more of an excuse. Why didn't we evacuate? Well, evacuation is a delicate balance, because if you evacuate too late, you then risk putting buses or cars or vehicles or campers on roads into low water areas, trying to get them out, which then can make it even more challenging. That's understood. It's very tough to make these calls, he said, because what we also don't want to do is cry wolf. Let me interrupt that. I mean, crying wolf should be the least, Cenk, of their worries at this point, right? I mean, like, so you cry wolf. Everybody, how many fire alarms and fire drills have we been in our lives? Probably, at least half a dozen, maybe more, where you go outside, oh, that shouldn't have happened, right? A bomb scare at an airport, everybody evacuates the airport. It adds, a little frustration, a little delay to your life. But crying wolf is better than burying all these kids. And so these areas take a lot of time to get to, says Dalton Rice of Kerrville. So even when first responders were on the ground at 3:30 in the morning, we had reports, we had first responders that were getting swept away, actually responding to the first areas of rainfall. That's how quick it happened. So again, I understand what Dalton Rice is saying. And yes, putting people in harm's way is not what they want to do. And having first responders come out there late and getting them swept away, obviously tragic. But by the same token, they had to have done more, and they needed to at least cry wolf.
Yeah, and it's a terrible response. I mean, there's no way around it, because I mean, that fact is devastating, that it starts on Thursday afternoon and they don't do the Amber Alert till Sunday, when most people are already dead. So what are we doing here? Look, if you say, hey, Cenk, it's too tough, and don't be too harsh on the first responders or the locals, etc. All right, but I'm going to need you to hold to that standard, blue state or red state, Trump or Biden or Democrat or Republican, right? So as long as we're all using the same standard, no problem, right? But I can't have you guys saying, oh, no big deal when over 100 people die in Texas, But then when something happens in a blue state, oh, it's the Democrats' fault.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exact. I mean that when we look at the news through that prism, that's what we're experiencing right now. We're experiencing this sort of the hypocrisy of that side, and let's talk a little bit about what MAGA's doing. Another flood threat looms right now in parts of central Texas. Trump's White House has announced the president's planning to visit later this week, and we should mention also Tropical Storm Chantal is along the Atlantic coast right now and doing devastating damage in North Carolina, which was hit by Helene last year, or maybe the year before. But so this is going on as we speak. Prior to this, Trump himself kind of skirted around questions pertaining to Texas yesterday. Let's listen to the president.
Are you still planning to phase out FEMA?
Well, FEMA is something we can talk about later. But right now they're busy working, so we'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
Okay, Democrats are claiming more federal cuts for the debts over in Texas.
Yeah, go ahead.
He couldn't hear that one apparently. I don't know. He's standing with Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce there. Questions continued to go unanswered. You heard the president not answer a question about FEMA at a time where a question about FEMA should have been answered. Some in the MAGA sphere believe they have the true answers, and of course, that means that this is all fake. Because when they don't like what they're hearing, they say it's fake. Candace Taylor, better known as the Jesus, Guns, and Babies candidate from Georgia, posted on X this: fake weather, real damage. Hurricane Helene left me powerless for 16 days and caused $57,000 in damage. This isn't just, quote, climate change. It's cloud seeding, geoengineering, and manipulation. If fake weather causes real tragedy, that's murder. Pray, prepare, question the narrative. So when you don't like the narrative, you just call it fake, apparently. That seems to be what they say. She goes on with fake weather, fake hurricanes, fake flooding, fake, fake, fake. And then readers added to the context that they thought people might want to know. Taylor's claim of fake weather, fake hurricanes, fake flooding lacks evidence. As of July 5, 2025, Kirk County, Texas saw flash flooding, kill 27 and leave 20-plus girls missing from a camp. NOAA records show hurricanes like 2017's Harvey, $125 billion in damage, are real. Yeah, we're back to the cloud seeding BS. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, you'll recall her from Georgia, representing that state in Congress, had this to say: I'm introducing a bill that prohibits the injection, release, or dispersion of chemicals or substances into the atmosphere for the express purpose of altering weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. It will be a felony offense. I've been researching weather modification and working with the Legislative Council for months writing this bill. It will be similar to Florida Senate Bill 56. We must end the dangerous and deadly practice of weather modification and geoengineering. Cenk, I'll give you the last word on the distinguished gentle lady from Georgia.
Is there any evidence that they geoengineered a flood in Texas? Right. There's none. No. There's none. But but it can't be that Trump cut FEMA, so it must be that some nefarious force created a flood in Texas without telling anyone through weather voodoo. Or maybe the client scientists were right and they've studied this for a living, and their whole job as scientists is try to do their best to find out what's true. And when all of them agree on something, it doesn't mean that it's always right, but there's a pretty good chance, as opposed to, oh yeah, I heard from Bob. It's for sure. They're making the clouds, and then that's why they had the crazy flood in Texas. Well, did they do it in Texas? Do you have any evidence of geoengineering, any weather in that area? No, you're just making it up. And you're making it up because you can't live with the fact that you weren't right. And so that's the sad part of this. Look, we try to say here on the Young Turks, open minds, open hearts. So my heart goes out to those wonderful people in Texas, and those poor girls, et cetera, that died and suffered from this. And why do we try to prevent climate change? Because we're all part of some Soros plan where we're gonna make you live in hobbit homes? No, we try to prevent climate change so there aren't massive hurricanes and floods that kill people from out of nowhere, because it's not out of nowhere. The scientists told you that all the storms are gonna be more severe. That's the way to actually prevent this, instead of chasing imaginary clouds like you're from that old cartoon Heidi, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is jumping from cloud to cloud, trying to find out what actually happened. Yeah, I figured it out. It's called climate change. Okay, all right, we got to take a break here. When we come back, how the budget bill found 18 different ways to screw us and to help corporate interests. So wait till you see this awful details of that. We'll be right back.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us.
All right, we're gonna go to Super Chat with a fellow with a questionable handle, but nevertheless, Burgundy will read anything in the iPad. Fart Boys for Life writes in a couple of times and says,
"It's not frat, right?"
No, okay. it is. It's not. I wish it was. Quote, he says Epstein, quote, killed himself in a high security cell while cameras malfunctioned at the same time and no guards and somehow had something to hang. Really? DOJ and FBI turned this into a clown show. This isn't justice, it's pure cover-up. I agree with that. Then he says this war could have ended ages ago if this is referring to the Israel-Gaza conflict, if the most moral army just used a Palestinian spy to locate Hamas like the US did with bin Laden. But no, Netanyahu chose genocide over strategy. US stayed silent, didn't even demand IDF wear body cams. This isn't war, it's anti-Palestinian cruelty, pure cowards of the 21st century. I had to change a word there to make it family safe. Okay, or a couple of words. IDF wearing body cams, that's the first time hearing of that. That would be an amazing idea. To say that it's not likely is a dramatic understatement. Robot Engineer writes in on the YouTube member section, I live about 90 minutes from the flooded area. It's a very remote area with poor to no mobile phone service. They had a large flood in 1987. They were not prepared and didn't have a plan. Locals own this. I hear you, locals, female, but they're both have purview there and hence are responsible, and they would have been responsible under all administrations. Jonathan Borzjani says, Greg Abbott somehow maintains credibility when he calls for genocide and a total ban of abortion in the same speech. I mean, yeah, but I'll tell you, some of the pro-life people we were yelling at have started to move on Gaza and are now saying, yeah, we gotta stop funding killing all those people. So a little bit of credit, not most of their leaders, but some of their voters. Preston the Dragon said, we need a strong politician who's not scared to run on cutting ties with Israel. Whoever that person is wins in 28. I agree. I think that if somebody said, yeah, I'm not going to fund Israel anymore, they would pick up an enormous amount of support in the election, would be much more likely to win. Their number one problem would be their own party, which would be furious with them because both parties love Israel, the politicians do, and the mainstream media. And the mainstream media would be livid over it. John Pendragon writes in, the next Department of Justice report will just say, there was no Epstein.
Tears my guts out.
That's a good one, and John, you never know, hold for it. The Forsaken one says, I love you guys so much for keeping it real. Never stop criticizing everyone who deserves to be criticized. Speak the truth. Thank you, brother. You make that possible. You're a member. All the members make that possible. We very much literally could not do it without you. So if you can, hit the join button below or go to tyt.com/join because this community makes all of this possible. Michael Amount Sr. says, yeah, I think people listen to Rogan. I think Trump going on Rogan helped tip the hat in his favor in 24. And I think that people are going to take notice about this issue the more they speak out, referring to the podcasters. I think that is true. Steel Farnsworth says, happy birthday, Anna, who isn't here.
Tears my guts out.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Michael with you guys, and Barry. And Barry, I appreciate you joining, but even though Burgundy will read anything in the iPad, I do know a joke name when I see one. All right, God bless. So that'll spare the last name. All right, Mike.
All right, the politics continued in Washington over July 4th. Here's this.
What we did in this bill is we made permanent the 2017 Trump's tax cuts, and that was geared for lower and middle class Americans. This is a great thing for people who go to work every day, and they're going to feel that.
Right, that's the Speaker of the House of Representatives telling you that this big, beautiful bill of the president's was, and the one that passed his House of Representatives twice, was written for working class Americans. The Speaker going on to his X account saying this: if you work for a living, this bill was written for you.
Yeah.
Although he should have said for you. For some reason, the "for" was capitalized, so that's only one of the issues I have with Speaker Johnson. In reality, though, this bill is for corporate American. It is stuffed, corporate America. It is stuffed completely with handouts to corporate America. We have the receipts thanks to reporting by Sludge. Before we get to that, Cenk, your big, beautiful thoughts.
Yeah, so look, guys, the Democrats say they're gonna do a bunch of policies that are actually really popular, like paid family leave, higher minimum wage, you guys know the list. And then they don't, and it's super frustrating. And in fact, one of the things that Biden did, he got so much credit for, is in this list, they've actually added to it. So we'll touch on the Democrats a little bit in a minute. But Republicans always tell you that they care about the debt. It's a monstrous lie. Never been true my whole life. I used to be Republican. It's one of the reasons I left the Republican Party. So this one adds another 3.3 trillion to the debt because they don't care. The only thing they care about, as I tell you all the time, tax cuts for the rich and giveaways to corporate donors. And the corporations matter more because they're the #1 set of donors. So that's why you're gonna see in this bill, as they pretended to be populist, they loaded it up with corporate pork, because that's what the Uniparty does, but specifically the Republicans. The Republicans have always been the party of big business. And so it's not surprising that they didn't deliver for you. They delivered for big business, as you're about to find out.
That's not what Speaker Johnson said, Cenk, so I don't know where you're coming up with that. Yeah, this bill that he said was for working people. If you're a working person, if you go to work for a living, this bill is for you. Well, let's go through that, because here are, and we're gonna go through them sort of gradually here, all of the industries that got a handout in Trump's budget. We're gonna start with big business in general, right? Thanks to the restoration of 100% bonus depreciation. That lets companies write off the cost of investments like machinery and equipment. The fossil fuel and construction industries are both happy to see the policy restored, and even companies like Meta. You'll recall Mark Zuckerberg at the inauguration on January 20th, and people saying, how could you do that? Well, this is it. This is it coming home to roost. Companies like Meta have benefited from this policy in the past and will now. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Association of Manufacturers, two major lobbying groups, worked hard to get this policy implemented. So there you have it for them. The second big winner, and you'll be shocked to hear this, Big Pharma. Can you believe it? Big Pharma did well in Congress. Trump's budget bill includes the Orphan Cares Act, and thanks to that legislation, more drugs will be exempted from price negotiation with Medicaid. In short, drugs that treat a single rare disease that are already exempted, the Orphan Cares Act will also exempt drugs that treat a few rare diseases. Big Pharma's major trade groups lobbied to get that legislation included in the bill. High five, Big Pharma. The third big winner is oil and gas drillers. I mean, this is just a hall of fame of people you want to see do well in Congress. Listen to this. The language directs the IRS to factor intangible drilling costs. Could it be any more vague? Related to the exploration and development of oil and gas when determining corporate alternative minimum tax liabilities. So this is a way of getting around paying tax on something called intangible drilling costs, which you could say is anything, right? We had to go out and buy whatever. We had to buy drill bits from all of our friends, and we'll just write those off. Also, it will significantly lower the book profits used to assess if a company owes the 15% minimum corporate tax, effectively gutting it for oil and gas producers. And you wonder why Republicans are so popular in Texas, because that is where the industry is, based in Texas and Oklahoma. The tax carve-out was added to the bill by Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. The oil and gas industry is his #1 career industry donor. The American Petroleum Institute pushed hard for the carve-out. ExxonMobil and Chevron are members of that lobbying group. How'd they get into the American Petroleum Institute? The fourth big winner, and we were hoping this would work out, is the gun industry. Thank goodness. The budget bill scraps a $200 federal tax on firearm silencers and short barrel rifles, because what citizen doesn't need a silencer and a short barrel rifle? In the Senate, that measure was pushed by John Cornyn of Texas, who secured its inclusion after benefiting from nearly $400,000 of NRA Victory Fund spending during his most recent election to Congress. Cornyn has also received at least $345,000 in campaign contributions from gun rights interests, making him the 4th highest recipient in Congress as of a 2022 Open Secrets analysis. Our best wishes that he can do better than 4th next time. Two major lobbying groups, the National Shooting Sports Foundation and the American Suppressor Association. I mean,
Jesus, there's a group for silencers?
Yeah, that's a silencer group. Fought for the measure to be included in the bill. The fifth big winner of the bill is, so just to review, Cenk, we've gotten big business, we've gotten big pharma, we've gotten big oil, we've gotten big gun. Of course, we come back now to Wall Street.
Of course.
Our old friend Wall Street. Section 899 of both the House and Senate versions of the bill, assuming that presumes that the members of Congress got through 898, dubbed the revenge tax, would have raised taxes on inbound foreign investment from countries that tax U.S. companies unfairly. Wall Street lobbied hard against the revenge tax. It was eventually cut from the bill. There are even more corporate handouts in the bill. For the sake of time, we've got to race through these. This is the rest of them. We'll do a lightning round here. Bill boosts defense spending by $150 billion. Private prison operators, our friends in the private prison industry, will get some cash from the $45 billion funding boost for ICE detention centers, of course. Companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin got a tax break. You know Elon Musk, you saw again at that same place where you saw Mark Zuckerberg, the inauguration of Donald Trump. You saw Jeff Bezos as well. And metallurgical coal companies got a new tax credit. I know we were concerned. Semiconductor companies got an expansion to a pre-existing tax credit. Finally, hedge fund and private equity managers, thank goodness, could breathe a sigh of relief after Trump stated he wanted to end the carried interest loophole, but declined to actually do so in his budget bill. Cenk, all the people you want to see happy come home happy after the July 4th weekend.
Yeah, it's a cornucopia of corporate pork. So everyone who—
Say that again.
Cornucopia of corporate pork.
Thank you.
So everyone who donated to these politicians got super rich with your money. So the oil and gas guys have $17 billion of subsidies every year. Now they're more unchecked, vague subsidies for whatever the hell you would like, because what difference does it make? It's just corruption. You're bribing me. I'm giving you the American taxpayers' money back. We don't even need a reason. They're not going to even check, right? So great credit to Sludge, who reported on all this. This is probably the last time you'll see it, unless you keep watching the Young Turks, because we're obsessed with the corruption. Mainstream media will almost never mention this, barely mentioned it as the bill was being debated. Afterwards, you won't see it at all. You'll see tons and tons of talk about how Trump reduced taxes on tips and overtime. I mean, how many of these different carve-outs for corporations did you see being talked about at the same level? None, right? And so what does that create? For the average person who doesn't follow politics, you might think half this bill was about getting rid of taxes on tips and overtime, because right-wing media talks about it, then mainstream media talks about it, and there's almost no pushback. Now, do you know that those particular ones that went for the average guy, they were small, capped, and temporary? all of these giveaways to corporations are permanent and super expensive and drown out whatever you were gonna get on your tax on tips and overtime. So, and this is my point about the Uniparty. So Biden did the CHIPS Act, and I was told by Democrats that it was so monumental and wonderful and progressive. And I was like, nonsense. We might need it, but it's not at all progressive. It was a giant giveaway to corporations. It was a $54 billion subsidy. And what did the Republicans do? Oh, look at that, they didn't fight it at all. They added on top of it. Why? Because both parties serve the same corporate interests. It's all good cop, bad cop. It's all nonsense, right? So yes, the Republicans get way more money from oil and gas. That's why they give more to oil and gas. On the other hand, why didn't Joe Biden put forward a resolution to cut the $17 billion in oil and gas subsidies? Would have been the most popular bill that any president has ever proposed, right? They're the most profitable companies. They don't need our money, but they didn't do that. Why? It's not necessarily that Biden is corrupted, although he probably is on that count, because he is on almost all counts, but it's because a ton of Democratic senators and congressmen also take greasy oil and gas money. But it goes for the whole list here. And look at how obvious and brazen they are. So Cornyn's like, well, I got $745,000 from the gun lobby, so I'm gonna be the main guy that gives the gun lobby all their loopholes. So hey, I'm the gun whore. Okay, so the gun, okay, here, make sure that the silencers pass and more people are murdered by assassins and snipers so they'll get panicked and buy more guns. I mean, who the hell needs a silencer? What do you need it for, a deer? No, you need to murder someone. By the way, a lot of times cops, like you're murdering cops. And that's why the cop killer bullets are legal. All this, you get untraceable guns are legal because the corporations own all of us. And then on big pharma, I mean, look at how obnoxious they are. They took their corporate pork bill and called it the Orphan Cares Act. Leave orphans out of this, you monsters. And I've told you, big pharma historically gives way more than a PAC like AIPAC, right? And so AIPAC would get $4 billion a year for Israel. Now in this genocide, they got an extra $30 billion. Big Pharma is getting hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions of dollars. And how do they do that? They limit competition. You're not allowed to negotiate drug prices. You're not, and now their monopolies on their patents have been extended through this bill. And they get every goodie there is. And what is that? That's corporatism. That's when corporations actually try to kill off the free market because that's competition. Corporations don't want competition. Corporatism is opposed to capitalism. It doesn't want capitalism. It hates free markets. And the minute a corporation has enough power, they go purchase politicians to end free markets, to end competition, so they can keep robbing us day in and day out. And this so-called big beautiful bill was beautiful to corporate donors who robbed us blind in every part of this bill. And that's the real story of what happened in this bill. And I'm glad you guys know it, and you should spread the word.
Just on one point you make, and this all, of course, still goes back to money and politics. And were that not the case, these special interests would not be doing as well in a bill like this. And if money and politics were limited, that wouldn't happen. It should also be pointed out that uniparty or not, every single Democrat who was able to vote against this voted against this. And that while you can say uniparty, this was a Republican bill that passed, and they not only did they pass this bill, they eliminated debate on it in the Senate, so it went right back to the House, and then the House was able to push ahead with it and vote on it without any amendments. This was, the Democrats did all they could legislatively in terms of voting on this to separate themselves from the Republicans on this bill. I think it's important to point that out. In a macro way, you have good points about it. In a micro way, however, they did what they could do.
All right, last point out from me is, I mean, Michael's right. All the Democrats voted against it, and votes matter, so give them credit for that. And you could see who the most corrupt people are. James Lankford takes the most from the oil and gas industry, and he delivers most for the oil and gas industry. The whole world has a 15% minimum tax on corporations. The whole world. There was a global pact. But oil and gas industry in America is allowed to cheat. When, by the way, they're one of the most toxic industries in the world. They create climate change, and we have to pay all of their costs. Like that flooding in Texas, we're gonna pay for that. ExxonMobil isn't gonna pay for that. And then now they're not even gonna pay their taxes. Do you pay more than 15%? I bet you pay more than 15% in taxes. Now they're gonna get to pay less than that.
But this bill was for you. This bill was for you.
Oh yeah, this bill was for you. What a joke. But look, last thing on Michael's point. On the macro point, guys, carried interest loophole. It's a total crime. It makes no sense at all. It is income. It's income that the bankers get, private equity gets. When you get income, you get taxed the maximum possible rate in your bracket. They get taxed the minimum on their income. It's an absolute outrage. Republicans go, oh golly gee, there's nothing we can do but extend it. And the Democrats go, oh golly gee, there's nothing we can do. And both of their donors are massive private equity companies that give to both politicians. Don't tell me there isn't anything you can do. That carried interest loophole is one of the most unpopular policies in the country. I could defeat it in 2 weeks if you tried and you called out the bankers and you called out the corrupt. But no, our politicians also take the money. So shh, come on. I'm sick of this system. All right, we'll be right back. Back on TYT, Jesus Loves You, T2525 wrote in the YouTube members section, and thank you for becoming a member. Stop fighting each other and look up. That is 100% right. I love that you said that. In fact, as some of you know, we've got a look up T-shirt on shoptyt.com, because stop just fighting to your left and to your right and downwards, etc. No. The donors are up top. They're up top. Look up. That's what's rigging the system as we speak. There's also member merch there, and members get some discounts as well. So check out tyt.com/member-merch. If I'm not mistaken, I'm going to make sure I'm not mistaken. Yeah, tyt.com/member-merch. Make sure you're ringing the bell to keep up with the Young Turks. Join if you can, hit the join button. In about 10 minutes or so, I'm gonna have the new Rebellion PAC candidate running on the Senate side. I think could make a huge difference. I think he has a good chance of winning. All right, now let me go to some commenters here. Words in the Absurd writes in, why isn't the Senator Tuberville condemning Texas for its incompetent response and threatening federal funding like he did during the California wildfires?
That's a great point.
Exactly, okay. Atomic Ann says, Michael is bringing the dry sarcasm in this Gen X power panel today, and I'm here for it. Okay, love that, Ann. Jacob Saylor said about the Epstein situation, the only good thing about this news is that clip of Alex Jones, where he's crying and vomiting and all that fun stuff.
Tears my guts out.
Eclectic Miscellany writes in, this is becoming a rare moment in history where neither party is popular with their base. People are waking up to the fact that it's not just the other side's team, it's our team too, that's the problem. They're all gaslighting us on Israel, on Epstein, on Trump's butt ugly bill. We're sick of it. Here, Eclectic. Catch a Butterfly says, I want MAGA to get outraged and demand accountability about Epstein. Oh, that's not gonna happen. Well, Catch a Butterfly, as it turns out, it is happening. Almost all of their leaders and the MAGA voters themselves are furious about this, generally speaking. I've barely seen any lame excuses. Bilal Shaban, thank you for gifting 10 memberships on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. And Dumpster Dog said, maybe it took over a year of Cenk and TYT raging about this on a daily basis to finally wake these people up about Palestine.
So beautiful.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Michael with you guys. One more story.
Tired of the two-party system in America? Check this out.
What is the size of Elon Musk's base? Well, I calculate it to be about 4%, just 4%, 1, 2, 3, 4% of all voters. What is that base made up of? Well, it's those who view Elon Musk favorably and the GOP unfavorably.
What's the history of third-party candidates in congressional races?
Horrible, awful, terrible, terrible, terrible. What are we talking about here? All right, elected to Congress from a third party since 1970, just 0.2% of all winners were either third party, independent, or write-in.
That's CNN's Harry Enten. Over the weekend, Elon Musk, you remember Elon announced that he had officially formed the America Party. But this morning, CNN's Harry Enten, as we just heard, explained why he thinks it's going to be a dud. There's a lot more about this, but Cenk, talk to me about what you heard Enten say.
Yeah. Look, that bothers me. And so I understand the facts that he's giving are correct. That's not the issue. The issue is, and I'm not necessarily in favor of this party at all. It's the Elon Musk party. I'm very skeptical about it. But brother, he started it 2 days ago. So what are we talking about here with as a 4% chance, et cetera? In my experience, mainstream media does not like any outsiders at all. So if you're an insider, you're a Democrat or Republican, they're gonna love you, okay? But if you're trying to upset the Democratic or Republican Party, they're gonna say on day one, oh, it has no chance, it has no chance. Yeah, but those other parties weren't started by billionaires. The reason I don't start a third party, even though I'm super frustrated with both parties, is because I don't have that kind of money. But Elon does. So that makes it a totally different ballgame, whether we like the idea or we don't.
Right, it's a longer conversation than we have time for here, but you do have to go by, political analysts go by precedent and historically.
The minute that there was a billionaire who supported a third party, which was Ross Perot, he instantly had a chance of winning.
Well, he had a chance of winning. He had a chance of beating Bush, they thought, or taking Bush down. I don't think
he was number one in the polling at one point.
At no time was anybody predicting he was going to win the presidency. There were polls that showed Perot ahead, not nationally. There were polls that showed Perot ahead in states. But we'll talk about that another. It's a really fascinating thing. That was the Reform Party. This, though, of course, Cenk, different. This is the America Party, and here's what Elon Musk had to say on July 4th of all days, the day the president signed the big beautiful bill. Elon Musk posted this on Twitter. I like saying it when he posts on X. Independence Day is the perfect time to ask if you want independence from the two-party, some would say uniparty, Cenk would say it too, he just said it, system. Should we create the America Party? Yes, 1.25 million votes, 65% of which said yes, 35% said no. Those are the final results, and of course, none of that is scientific. The next day, Musk announced that because enough of his users voted yes, he had officially formed the America Party. There is, however, a catch. Neither Musk nor his advisors have filed paperwork to the FEC that shows the formation of a new political entity called the America Party, and time will only tell if he does do that. And let's assume for now, Cenk, that he does do that. What would the America Party stand for? That's what one user asked Musk on X, writing this. This is Tyler Palmer. Is this the America Party platform? Reduce debt, responsible spending only, modernize the military with AI and robotics, pro-tech, accelerate to win in AI, less regulation across the board, but especially in energy, free speech, pro-natalist, centrist policies everywhere else. If so, where do we send our donation? In separate posts, Musk say possibility the American Party would support the Second Amendment and Bitcoin. So those are the party's positions for now. But a political party also needs candidates. To that end, Elon Musk wrote this: backing a candidate for president is not out of the question, but the focus for the next 12 months is on the House and Senate. Trump's response to Musk's announcement was too long for us to quote here in its entirety. So here are some experts. I'm saddened to watch Elon Musk go completely, quote, off the rails, essentially becoming a train wreck over the past 5 weeks. He even wants to start a third political party, despite the fact that they have never succeeded in the United States. The system seems not designed for them. I'm going to stop there for a second, Cenk. Trump is saying they've never succeeded in the United States in terms of winning, but what he knows is that they have debilitated the party in office before, and they have hurt members of a party. So we saw that with Ross Perot and George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, and actually Trump ran as an independent or considered running as an independent for a while back, I think, in 2000 election. So he has firsthand knowledge of this. So look, that list of Tyler Palmer that Elon Musk responded yay to or yeah to, it sounds like, oh, this is an independent party for the tech bros. It's not that interesting. It's just a different donor class. You know, we'll see if it changes from that, but that's where it stands now. Yeah, but both sides, both set of voters are super upset with their own parties. So I don't know that this might be a different time and a different guy and different policies. But yeah, historically they've had trouble, and you know, MAGA's mad at Musk because they think that it might cost Republicans elections. But right now, we don't know if it's going to be 0.4%, not even exist, 4% or 40%.
Yeah.
So,
but Trump has curated his own demise in a sense. If Musk is able to get candidates to run against sitting Republicans in the Senate and House and cuts into that vote, splits that vote at all, because I'm guessing not a lot of Democrats are going to vote for Elon Musk next time. I do think that that could be something that he is now seeing as dangerous to his power in the second part of his term, in his lame ducks.
Yeah,
term.
and Elon could be doing it because he really thinks with my money, we can get a third party up and running and we can win seats. And you know, all these tech guys tend to have enormous heads, right?
Yeah.
Or he could be doing it out of spite, going, oh, you want to screw me on my subsidies? Electric vehicle subsidies, and the guy I wanted at NASA so he can give all the contracts to SpaceX. So you're gonna give the oil and gas guys all their subsidies, but you're not gonna give it to me? All right, how about I make sure that you lose all the rest of the elections? But we don't know which one of those is really motivating him. But we do know for now, this party kind of exists. And if you really put a lot of money into it, could be very relevant. And if they cost the Republicans some elections, it would be massively relevant. If they beat both parties, it would be massively relevant.
In a federal election, a Senate election that is going to see a lot of vulnerable Democrats, an unfavorable slate in 2026, this could be welcome news if it peels off votes from a Republican in a close race. I think of Tom Tillis stepping down in North Carolina and other places too.
Yep. All right, guys. So we're out of time for the main show, but we've got an interview coming up next. Mystery guest. New candidate joining a rebellion pack endorsing him. He's joining the rebellion, and he's a Senate candidate. You guys do not want to miss this. We've got an idea for a party within the party, and this one is going to work.
I know him. I covered him. He's fantastic. So
look at that endorsement. So stay right here and find out who it is. All right, back on the Young Turks. All right, we have an interview for you guys, a special, because this person is joining the rebellion. They're a Senate candidate, and Rebellion PAC is endorsing them, and they are a true economic populist and running in the state of Iowa. JD Scholten joins us now as the new Rebellion candidate. So super important race. JD has run for office before and done fantastic in a red district. First, welcome, JD.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
No problem. All right, so let's jump in first, and then we'll come back and discuss your, your career, what you've done in the past, et cetera. But first, who are you running against, and why are you so excited about this race?
Well, Joni Ernst is the incumbent senator that we're running against, and one of the reasons I jumped in the race is her town hall that went viral, where she said we're all going to die. I firmly believe that we all don't have to die, so billionaires can have a bigger tax break. And when that was going viral, I was on my way to a funeral of a family friend, and being at the funeral, Senator Harkin was there, who actually held that seat before. And it just felt like a calling. And so she gave a horrific apology that was in a cemetery that also went viral. And on that Monday, we just said, you know what, let's do this. And so we launched a campaign. It's been going very exciting so far already. And on day 2, we moved one of the raiders from it being a safe Republican seat to a lean Republican. So a lot of energy already early on in this campaign.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because Cook Political Report now rates it as likely Republican, which is good movement in the right direction, but still it's red. So how do you plan on winning in a state that is likely red?
Well, right now, I would say that people are frustrated at both parties. There's no doubt about that. And if there's one year to compare this to is 2018, and you mentioned a little bit at the beginning, we took a race that Trump won, or a district that Trump won by 27 points and lost by 3 points in 2018, my congressional campaign. We think we can do something similar, and getting out there to the people with the right message every single day and create that movement. And I think the Midwest is just ripe for an economic populist movement. And that's one of the many reasons why I decided to run.
Yeah, and Obama won Iowa at one point. So it's not like Democrats can't win the state. And you've got to get back to what was a winning strategy in Iowa. And look, again, you would know better. I mean, plus 24, you closed 24 points. That is not something that happens often. That's why you're the leading Democrat in this race to go up against Joni Ernst. And it's wonderful to have a populist as the leading candidate. So let's talk about the mechanics, like the policies with which you're running that you think will resonate with Iowa and give you a chance to pick it back up for the Democrats.
Yeah, so I'm going to name our top 3 that we talk about every single day, where it's fight, fix, secure. And I didn't get these from consultants. I got these from driving around, holding town halls all across Iowa, or the 4th district back in the day. And these are the same things I'm running on now. So fight for universal health care, fix the economy so it works for everybody, not just the billionaires or the huge multinational corporations, and then secure our democracy from the special interests and the billionaires that are dictating it right now. And so fight, fix, secure every single day.
Yeah, and so Rebellion PAC has basically 2 rules. One is you can't take corporate PAC money, and so that goes with the 3rd point that you just mentioned, right? And the other is that when you get in office, you actually have to try to do these things, not like have them as talking points. And then when Democratic leadership says we're not doing any of that, you just go, oh, okay, then I'll just wait another 20 years, right? And the populist plank that is in rebellion pack is similar to what you're talking about here, right? Deliver for the average American, higher wages, lower drug prices by negotiating prices at Medicaid, lower housing prices by banning private equity from buying residential real estate, and no more wars, and get money out of politics, and paid family leave. So now we're told over and over again by cable news, mainstream media, JD, that those will not resonate in a red state, that those are some sort of like radical policies or something. But the polling doesn't indicate that. Do you think that those policies are going to be very popular in Iowa?
Of course they're popular. I mean, the proof is, look at what Senator Hawley is trying to act as a faux populist down in Missouri because these things are so popular. Now, you have him still voting for what I call the billionaire bailout bill last week. And all Republicans, or almost all Republicans, ended up doing that. And so these things that we're talking about, it's not only the right thing to do, it's the popular thing to do. And I think that's the frustration that's boiling up, is because all this stuff, if it's so popular, why isn't it getting passed? And that's the frustration that that I hear from people on a daily basis.
Yeah, and so, all right, but let me ask you, so no corporate PAC money?
Correct.
Okay, great.
No corporate PAC money. We're not accepting any.
And if Chuck Schumer or whoever is the next majority leader in the Senate for the Democrats, if that's how it goes in this election cycle, says, yes, JD, that's all good and fine, but we're not doing paid family leave. We're not doing any of these bills, okay? You have to understand, you have to trust Schumer, okay? That's the right strategy, and so please be a good team player, otherwise we'll tell the media that you're the bad guy that's ruining unity in the Democratic Party. What would be your response?
Well, that's what brought us to this point. You know, when I first got to the voting age and was excited about politics, we had Democrats in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, and where in the Senate. Where are those? You know, my political heroes, the Paul Wellstones, the Tom Harkins, the Berkeley Bedells. Those are the people who fought for stuff like that, and that's why they're so beloved. You know, even after they're gone. So that's, to me, like it's not about the DC establishment. It's about the people of Iowa. They deserve better. They deserve better than what I feel right now. And the fundamental reason why I decided to run for office is we have a broken healthcare system that I feel is a GoFundMe healthcare system. We have a broken food system that's a broken JBS food system. And we have a broken economy that's a Dollar General economy that's broken.
Yeah, you describe yourself as a baseball playing, Bible reading, working class, proud prairie populist. And so we're proud of all of our populists on Rebellion. I say we because, obviously I host the Young Turks, but I'm unabashed about my activism and happy to be one of the co-founders of Rebellion. And so we've got Richard Ojeda running in North Carolina 9, Randy Bryce, iron worker, running in Wisconsin 1. You got Ro Khanna, who's already in Congress. And so we got an iron worker, a veteran, really smart, progressive populist in Ro Khanna, and you're a baseball player. So are you, by the way, you're 45, are you still playing baseball?
I am. Luckily, we have an off day tonight, so that's why I'm able to do this. But yeah, playing professional baseball for the Sioux City Explorers and the American Association. And yesterday was the year anniversary of being called on an emergency game where they needed pretty much just an able body. They gave up 34 runs the 2 previous games, and with less than 3 hours notice, they gave me a call, and I pitched 6 2/3, only gave up 2 runs, stayed with the team the rest of the year and tied for the team lead in wins and went 6-2 as a starter last year.
Damn, you can't stop winning. So we got an iron worker, a veteran, and a baseball player. I love this.
I love it. But at the same time, I'll be very honest. It's very hard to play professional baseball. It's very hard when you're 45, and it's very hard when you run for U.S. Senate and try to play for professional baseball. But Lord knows we're doing our best.
Well, those are real jobs, okay? And yeah, I mean, it's not like the corporate Wall Street guys that you see all over the Senate, right? You're a real person from Iowa trying to get by, trying to take care of your family. And that's a breath of fresh air.
Well, and I'll also say that right now the Democratic Party is spending $20 million in DC on consultants and focus groups on trying to figure out a message for young men because of how bad the Democratic Party has been the past few cycles on that and the shift that we've seen. Well, I get paid a couple grand a month to talk to my teammates every single day and just to figure out ways that I can welcome them into our coalition. That's my vision of all this. You know, I know in order to win in Iowa, a wave is not going to do enough. We have to welcome people who feel disenfranchised by what's happening out there, and there's plenty of them in order to win. We just have to find a way to welcome them into our coalition.
Yeah, so one of the last things I want to talk to you about was the media reaction, because oftentimes it's media reaction that kills outsider candidates, whether they're populist, progressive, whatever they might be, right? But on the other hand, you're the leading candidate on the Democratic side, so that gives you a lot of credibility. And you closed 24 points in a Republican district before, that gives you a lot of credibility. So I'm genuinely curious, what's the media reaction been so far?
Well, locally, there was an Iowa State professor who went on Iowa Public Radio who said we're the front runner. Nationally, it said there's a couple different things. There's a thing called Split Ticket, and they do modeling. And they said if I was the nominee, we have a chance at winning. If not, otherwise it'll be a safe Republican seat. And so, you know, I think we've proven ourselves as a campaign year in, year out. I've overperformed the top of the ticket in every single race. And I'm currently in my state house seat last fall. I won a district that Trump won. And so right now I'm the only Democrat in 42 counties in North Central and Northwestern Iowa. I consider myself a bit of a blueberry in a bowl of tomato soup, but it's not because I lack the values or anything like that. I wear my politics on my sleeve, and I just go out there and tell about folks who I am and welcome them into my coalition.
So JD, why do you think you do so much better in red states than the average Democrat does?
You know, back in 2018, nobody was talking about some of these issues. You know, a lot of it was agriculture related and antitrust, anti-monopoly, but it's just I went out there and listened to folks. The way that the system is meant, it's not meant for working class people first. Like, I don't know a ton of billionaires or a ton of millionaires to get donations from. We're very small and grassroots when it comes to that type of stuff. And that's part of the why the system doesn't work for everyday Iowans or everyday people. But it's having that message, you know, that resonates with people. I mean, in 2020, when I was running for Congress, I was getting retweeted by people who said they're ranchers and farmers for Trump. You know, there is a movement waiting to happen out there. We just have to tap into it. And I think that's one thing that I've been able to do the past few years.
Yeah, and it's, I have a theory. You're a real person and not like some actor doing corporate talking points and carefully, you know, crafted by the consultants, et cetera. And I'll know you're really about to win when the Ernst team or other parts of media start complaining that you have an unfair advantage. So I think you are gonna win. So I want you to mark my words. At some point they'll say something like, oh, well, it's not fair. He's playing baseball all across the state, and that gives him an unfair advantage in talking to the voters. Hey, Joni Ernst, what's stopping you? You're the current senator, right? But then last time she talked to the voters, she told them that they're all gonna die.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, so let's end on that. So you're gonna run against Ernst. Obviously that you're all gonna die is a problem for her because the underlying issue is she doesn't really care about your health care. She doesn't care about cutting Medicaid, et cetera. So that's a clear and easy one that you're gonna run on. What else are Joni Ernst's Achilles heels that you'll be running against?
I mean, right now, and this isn't being talked about enough, is we have an agriculture, the agriculture economy is in a recession. And so you talk about like Trump coming to Iowa, and he always loves to say, oh, the farmers love me. Well, which farmers? Is it the farmers that he cut their contracts through DOJ earlier this year? Is it the row crop farmers who are having to pay more for their inputs because of the tariffs he put on this year unnecessarily? Is it the soybean farmers who have lost their market to Asia, and now that's going down to Brazil, and the same multinational corporations that were selling Iowa soybeans overseas are now down in Brazil selling those to overseas? Or is it the cattle ranchers who have allowed or are watching the Trump administration allow JBS, the world's largest global meat packer, who has had over $256 million in corruption fines, they're being waived by the Corruption Fairness Act, so they can become a publicly traded company in the United States. Why? Coincidentally, they gave $5 million to the inauguration, Trump's inauguration. Like, who are these farmers that quote unquote love Trump? So yeah, I know we're running against Joni Ernst, but this is far beyond just Ernst. This is about Iowans who are not getting a fair deal. This BBB, the billionaire bailout bill, this is going to devastate rural hospitals. This is going to hurt rural nursing homes. This is going to hurt rural OBGYN units. And so that's going to add more stress to our urban centers. And so there's going to be massive impact on all Iowans. And so ultimately, this is beyond just Joni. This is a race to help Iowans get a fair shake.
So JD, since you don't take corporate PAC money, how can people find out more about you and help you?
Yeah, so the biggest thing we're doing right now is fundraising so we can get Sioux City Sioux 2.0, which is our campaign Winnebago, so we can go out to the people. So you can go to ScholtenForIowa.com. That's SCHOLTENFORIOWA.com. And if it's $2, if it's $100, if it's more, whatever, we'll take it. It goes a long ways to help us get Sioux City Sioux back on the road so we can talk to as many people as possible.
All right, we'll put that ScholtenForIowa.com link down below if you're watching this later on YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you watch it. All right, JD Scholten, leading Democratic candidate in that Iowa race that now all of a sudden seems very winnable for the Democrats. Great to have you on the Young Turks, and I am thrilled that you have joined the rebellion.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. All right, guys. Now we seem to have our cleanup hitter. Gonna be interesting. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.